For this assignment, I chose to interview Megan Niatawa. She is a computer science teacher at Buena Vista High School. I had her throughout high school for various different courses, and I selected her for this interview because she was one of the first people who came to mind. Initially, I did want to sort of brainstorm and see if I could come up with a different leader to interview because she does not have a leadership title assigned to her within the school, such as like dean or administrator. But I ultimately chose her for this because she has always displayed all of the qualities that I attribute to a great leader. It also turns out that she does have a leadership role within the school. It was just something that I was not aware of, and I will touch on that later. I will begin by discussing her leadership style, which I forgot to ask her to describe in her own words, but from the other questions, I was able to identify four values and principles that I believe drive her leadership style the most. The first one is inclusivity. So, in the interview, she mentioned how throughout her career she has always looked up to other women in the field of computer science, because of them being a minority in the field. And she has also looked up to women in leadership positions, such as her principal, Dr. Carr. And she definitely expresses this value for inclusivity in her leadership. I can recall her running a Girls Who Code club in high school, and I'm sure she still has it going now. The second value that seems to drive her leadership style is the way that she views opportunity and the importance that she places on opportunity. So I can recall her always seeking out different opportunities for her students and announcing them at the beginning of class and making sure that everyone was aware of different deadlines and requirements. And she was also very willing to write letters of recommendations for her students. And she also went out of her way to put a few of these opportunities into her own hands, such as the club that I mentioned earlier. And I can recall her chaperoning some field trips to various computer science events. I remember there was a quiz bowl and also an engineering conference here at UNO. The third value is responsibility, and elaborating on this one requires a little bit of context. So I mentioned how she teaches at Buena Vista, and for the first 2 years that the school was open, she was the one and only computer science teacher there because the student capacity was at about half, and so they didn't really need more than one computer science teacher. But by the third year, the school was at its full capacity, and that combined with the fact that Omaha Public Schools had added an introductory course called Foundations of Computing to its graduation requirements meant that the school needed at least one more computer science teacher, if not more than that. But they were unable to hire another computer science teacher due to the teacher shortage that I'm sure you're aware of. And so the school decided that such an introductory course could be taught by teachers in other subjects, so long as they relied on strong lesson plans and a strong curriculum. And that is where Miss Niatawa's responsibility and leadership comes in. She was the one who took charge of that and designed and provided the lesson plans to those teachers. Not only that, but she also sort of mentored them and guided them on how they should approach teaching computer science as non-computer science teachers. And she was able to do all of that while managing classes of her own that she had been teaching. And the final principle that I identified from this interview is not losing yourself in responsibilities or work. In other words, I would describe this as sort of self-care or having balance between work or academics and your personal life. She mentioned how she keeps a, quote, clear divide between work and personal life. Another way this principle is expressed is through her emphasis on compassion, specifically on compassion towards oneself. Or as she put it in the interview, giving yourself some grace, being able to grow and move on from mistakes and failures. This was her response to the final question, where she was asked to provide some advice for aspiring leaders. And it's definitely something that I needed to hear as an aspiring leader, because I have always felt that compassion towards others is something that comes very naturally, while compassion towards myself is something that requires a lot of conscious efforts that I don't always take. And so in order to be a better leader, I will make sure that I am compassionate towards myself as much as I am with others. Throughout my discussion of her leadership style, I mentioned a few of my key takeaways from this interview, such as inclusivity and compassion. But I also wanted to touch on her approach to communication within a team. I mentioned her role in the PLC, or professional learning community. One aspect of that is leading their regular meetings. And within these meetings, her approach to communication with everyone in the room is reliant on reiteration. So, for example, if something is very important, she will send out an email, and she will also make sure to touch on that subject in person with whoever it pertains to or to the group. And she also mentioned how at the end of their meetings, she likes to summarize their discussion and identify their key takeaways, as well as 3 action items. Her tendency towards reiteration is something that I noted as her student throughout her lessons, as well as in email announcements, as I mentioned earlier. I did not think that it was intentional or that it served any purpose at the time, but looking back, I can definitely say that it helped with my learning, as well as remembering different events that she sent emails about. And I can also see how this would be helpful in the setting of a meeting. I think it definitely helps to refocus a group towards their goal and sort of remind them that that was the whole purpose of a meeting. I see myself using this approach if I am ever in a similar role. To summarize this video, I interviewed Megan Niatawa, one of my former teachers, whom I really look up to as a leader, despite the fact that during my experiences with her, she was a teacher and did not hold any official leadership role. This interview shed some light on our shared values, especially inclusivity, compassion, and work-life balance. This interview and reflection have left me with definitely a heightened admiration for her as a leader and as a teacher. and it has also introduced me to some leadership techniques that I may implement in the future.